might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it. So explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it. No scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool. Hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones. Bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
All right, welcome back to the Anti-Media. This is the Labor Day show, and I hope everyone's having a good one. I'm filling in for Dick Burnaby, who's the normal host of the Monday Hour. I hear he had some difficulty with some lobster and tequila, but I don't know further specifics on that. I'll have my co-host DB launching that critical news at this hour. But it's been, a hell of a week. I went to Burning Man myself, and there was some sad news coming out of there, which I'll go into in a minute. And then we have all kinds of things on the horizon here. The war trumpet is crescendoing in terms of an attack on North Korea. President Trump will be ostensibly ending DACA tomorrow, which of course is the legal pathway for illegal immigrants who are brought in as children. So it's going to be a contentious week, to say the least, and we decided not to take Labor Day off today, and here to talk about this with me is DB Schwartz. DB, how you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. There's a lot of things going on all at the same time, and there's always been this portentous event that everybody thought was going to happen called September Surprise. So here we are, and it was thought to be around this date, 17, 18, 19, when we'd start to see a ripple effect and the economy would start to show the cracks, and the war, like you said, trumpets would start, because the people that are running our world basically have it on a military-industrial destruction, rebuilding economy cycle. And that's all they got. And they just hoard all the wealth and all the tech and all the advances for themselves and literally build underground cities. And looks like the set-up city that we've been reading about forever is here. I mean, sometimes, Jake, I think they wait and wait and wait for like that perfect storm, quite literally, to hit. And with Irma and with Harvey and with the West Coast basically on fire, and even Canada on fire. I mean, today I woke up and there was smoke in my sky, and that was from Canada. So that's over 500 miles away. And yeah, man, the world's on fire.
The world is on fire. Yeah, man. There's the Pacific Northwest is full of fires, and yeah, there's a lot going on. I mean, there's usually a lot going on, but it seems like we're hitting a kind of inflection point right now. And yeah, the paradigm, the cycle that we're on right now is for war. That's how the powers that be seem to want to generate value in the world, and most of us disagree with that. Unfortunately, they are the ones in power, but with the movement of decentralization, including decentralization of currency, which you alluded to, things could be in for a change, and we'll just see how. It's going to be interesting to see how tenaciously the cyber military industrial complex is going to fight back against that decentralization, because obviously they stand to lose everything. But, in the meantime, this constant ratcheting for war. I mean, I think the North Korea thing is different in several ways than what we've experienced.
Well, what does North Korea represent? It represents one of the last great wild cards in the world. I mean, Iran and anybody else in the so-called axis of evil players in Russia, these are all sane, long-term civilizations that are far older than the U.S. They're, for the most part, older than basically anywhere from Europe that any of the immigrants to the U.S. came from initially. So what I'm trying to say is these cultures have been around forever except North Korea. And people need to understand, like, the Korean Peninsula, for the most part, it's basically been part of Japan. And people need to read into that. It was always in the Japanese sphere of influence. It was never really even its own country until after World War II and the partitioning of it. So it's a wild card, man. The thing is, the tech they have is better than a lot of people think. Like, yeah, they're Stone Age in some regards, but I mean, they have an ICBM with a hydrogen bomb, so I mean, yep. they can launch. They
probably have EMPs as well.
That is an EMP. An EMP is just exploding a nuke high enough up in the atmosphere that it generates an electromagnetic pulse down.
Right. I guess I just meant like that's a slightly different. But yeah, I mean, the point here is that in the previous 15 years in this war on terror. These have not been the wars have not gone well, but not because we're facing a particularly dangerous enemy. Many of these wars were just not meant to be won. They were meant to go on and on and on. Per that Orwell quote, which I can't remember off the top of my head, that the war is not meant to be won.
It's meant to be constant.
It's meant to be constant, and that pretty much has been how it is. And I don't think anyone could be hard to make an argument that Afghanistan, Iraq, or Libya represented significant threats to us. And I would certainly argue with anyone who said that. In fact, I would argue that to a certain extent, Al-Qaeda and ISIS do not represent significant threats to us, because if you look at the number of Americans they've killed, it's just astronomically lower. It's on par with getting like hit by a bolt of lightning or something. But with North Korea, we're facing a country that, now correct me if I'm wrong here, but would this not be the first preemptive military strike on a nuclear power in history?
Well, we simply can't do it, Jake. I mean, they can do it.
They're really acting like they're going to, though. But answer my question. Am I right on that? Would this not be the first attack on a nuclear power, a preemptive strike on a nuclear power?
Pretty much. I can't think of one that we've done. I know that India and Pakistan have constantly first striked each other, and thankfully their leadership aren't insane and haven't retaliated with nukes. But yeah, I can't imagine us doing this to another nuclear armed power.
It would take someone like Trump to do it, which was always which was always the danger
of Trump. Yeah.
There were many, many dangers in electing Trump, but this was one of them. This was the one we all feared, which is that what if this guy gets on a war racket and decides that the only way that he's going to get reelected, and at this point, his presidency has been abysmal. I mean, there's no getting around that. He hasn't done very few of the things he wanted to. Even with both branches of Congress, they couldn't repeal Obamacare. He has not had a good presidency. War has been the only thing that on a bipartisan level he has received praise for. And you have people on even the left will applaud, and even the mainstream media outlets that are pretty much on a 24/7 anti-Trump kick will applaud him for his presidential moves when he bombs people. So it's no surprise that he would maybe view a war as a way to, basically extend his presidency to a second term. But
well, Bush was in the same position before 9/11 hit. He was in the tank as far as his PR and his approval rating, and ultimately,
fairness to Bush, and I give him no credit, but with all fairness to him, we were hit with a terrorist attack or whatever the attack was.
Sure. So we could get hit again. I mean, like you said, if North Korea thinks we're going to preemptive, maybe they preemptive us.
Well, I think very likely be a false flag. I mean,
exactly.
Even Noam Chomsky put that out there, and I it's a very very unlikely that we would do it without a false flag first. And of course, that would be the most obvious way to rally the entire country around a war with this. The question is, what is the nature of the false flag going to be? Is this going to be EMP? That's what I think too, man. Yeah. And we sound like lunatics here, but
it's a dual. This is the worst possible thing about being what we are, which is we're a technocracy. We're relying on technology in all facets of our society, from growing our food to producing our power, and none of the infrastructure has been updated, just simply because they've expected World War III since the end of World War II. And for them, it makes no sense to bury power lines and rebuild roads when they think it's all going to get nuked anyway in an exchange. So there you go, people. That's why no infrastructure, and why Pork Belly always siphons funds away and goes to black projects, because they expect to get hit any day. They're not going to rebuild the infrastructure until we win World War III. And I think everyone knows there's no winners of World War III. It's just a massive depop and a rebuild. And these people are going to have ultimate control when that happens. Because if you think the world's bad with 7.5 billion, it's going to be infinitely worse with 2 billion when they have total control over us.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. I mean, I do think there'd be significant paradigm changes that we can't even fathom at this point during some kind of global depopulation event like that. But, namely, I think you would have a complete siphoning off of alternative communities that would live off grid and would, develop completely autonomous agorist communities.
Who survives the exchanges is what I think you're saying, right? Because I think we can all admit that World War III involves nuclear exchanges, because somebody's going to lose the conventional war, and they're not going to just give up. I mean, this next war is the last war. It's the war for keeps.
Well,
if we beat Russia,
I think it depends on the country. I think, like you said, India and Pakistan have had more rational minds when it comes to managing warfare in a nuclear age. But I don't think anyone expects North Korea to do the same, which is why
if you have so there's 3 superpowers in the world. We can admit that, right? There's us and China and Japan. Right. It's not Russia. No, it's not. It's Japan.
Okay.
No. Japan owns 70% of the U.S.'s debt. Japan has the highest technology in the world by far.
Well, economically, they have perhaps more than Russia, but militarily, Russia is vastly superior than Japan.
It doesn't matter now, because they can just leverage us. So we're their lapdog. You know what I mean? We do their bidding for them. So
I see your point, but I mean, if I were to list 3 superpowers, I would certainly put Russia over Japan. But tomato.
I can tell you the Japo-Russian War or Russo War would tell you everything if you just read about that, where they just worked the Russians. I mean, they've fought 3 times and they've worked the Russians every single time. So they just work them every time.
Working the Ruskies.
Yeah, it's just because of tech, dude. And that's the name of the game is, do you have willpower? And Japan, you can say check. And do you have tech? And then you can say check. Do we have willpower? I'd say no. And we have tech, yes, of course. But
no.
That we don't, man. I mean, if we got into a protracted war where people's standard of living dropped to horrible, they would put so much pressure on the government. The government would have to clamp down and create a basically universal permanent martial law.
Okay. All right. So where are we at here then? So supposedly coming up this Thursday, we're going to get really deep into this argument. We're going to try and finally do our debate on Thursday with Lou Colagiovanni from Occupy Democrats, who is a leftist, probably fairly similar to us, actually. Maybe a little bit more officially aligned with the Democratic Party. But he has come out and said he fully supports an attack on North Korea, and his reasons for it are humanitarian ones, in that he calls it would be the first morally justified war since World War II because of the horrible conditions the people there live in. Obviously, I disagree with him. Claire Bernish, who is going to join us, disagrees with him. I know Nick Burnaby disagrees with him. I've tried to find someone else on his side, but it's hard to do without, dredging the neoconservative. Even a lot of neocons don't want war with North Korea. I think we can look at the past two administrations, which have been hawkish to say the least, Bush and Obama, and neither one of them opted to do anything militarily against North Korea. There might be a good reason for that. But we're going to try and have that debate finally on Thursday. Speaking of technocracy, we've had internet problems with Lou, which have thwarted our attempts for the past month, I guess, to do this debate.
Well, he's in the belly of the beast, though. Isn't he in Vegas?
He's in Vegas, yeah.
Well, yeah, no wonder they're screwing around with his internet.
No, I think, who knows, man? I don't know. I mean, internet is I actually get frustrated when internet doesn't work for journalists, especially. It's just like, God damn it, how do you function without the internet?
Have you heard in Taiwan it's 100 times faster than the U.S.?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. Dude, in North Korea, it's a lot faster than us. Because, of course, it's because they don't consolidate their resources into anything else for the people. But the Korean.
They don't save every keystroke for ad infinitum, so they can use that against you in the court of law in the future when you become a headache. Right.
Speaking of which, DB, I'm writing a screenplay right now about a guy who works for the NSA and discovers a division that is meant to conscript him into a psyop that will make him beholden to the state. I think you'll like that idea.
Jake, when are you going to write the book that is the one that would give people hope, which is that the world's already okay because we can be certain that the world's smartest person is a kid right now on a computer and they're good. And they've created...
That's an excellent idea. And I really do think the world is going to go on. And I do think the world is going to end up reaching far closer to a utopia than people would think. And it's because of, like you said, I mean, the tools that are going to be available to children growing up in the next few generations are just simply unfathomable. And there will be, of course, a commensurate, draconian element to that as well. But as I often cite, Cory Doctorow's book, Little Brother, shows how there's this growing movement to turn Big Brother, flip it around, turn the eye back in, and use the tools of Big Brother for the sake of encryption, for the sake of exposing and making transparent the actions of the government. See, the government likes to have their cake and eat it too. They want to know everything about us, every keystroke, like you said, every piece of metadata, everything we do. They want to know everything about us, but as soon as we flip it back around on them and try and find out what they're doing, they want to call it some kind of domestic terrorism. And they're basically calling WikiLeaks a hostile terrorist group at this point. And I've long predicted, I wrote a whole article about how I think eventually the U.S. government will go to actual cyber war with leakers like WikiLeaks and Anonymous and those. I think it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And I think the next generation of people are going to have to organize. That's why I'm writing an article right now about Barrett Brown's Pursuance Project, which is a very revolutionary system of encrypted project management that I think is pretty exciting. And I think with people like him setting the infrastructure for the next 20 years, these next 20 years are absolutely critical in terms of reclaiming the infrastructure so that we can properly organize and mobilize against the deep state. And I do think, yes, like you said, there's children out there right now who are hacking into their first system and who are designing AI programs, AI apps that are going to simply make it impossible for centralized power to wield the kind of corrupt structures that they have in the past. And we're living in a whole new time.
Jake,
the nation states that were set up in the past were created and developed in an entirely different historical epoch. And we're about to enter a new epoch with new tools and new entities even that are going to make it impossible for them to maintain that level of control.
Who in your opinion, because you've probably read more up on this than I have, is who in your opinion would have been, most likely to have created the first AI program and given it unfettered worldwide internet access?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a couple different theories on that. Zoltan, what's his last name? The guy.
Istvan?
Yeah, Istvan. Yeah, he's a transhumanist, ran for president under the transhumanist candidate. He believes that it's a national race, and basically the first nation to the singularity basically wins the race and defines all subsequent singularities. I actually think it's just as likely that it'll be a private corporation such as Google that will do it. I think that corporation would probably then be absorbed into.
Didn't they do a show about that called Fringe?
Fringe is one of my favorite shows, actually, but I don't believe there was any subplot in there about artificial intelligence.
Well, the corporation, whatever the hell.
Oh, right. Okay.
They'd come to that event first. They'd privately come to the event, and the event is, of course, the singularity.
Okay, you're right. I don't remember it being phrased in the way of a singularity.
No, but the singularity always coincides with the ability to transverse time and space, because once you have an AI can exponentially program itself quantumly. Therefore, it can travel through time and space if you just basically have the engineering capability to create the machine that it tells you to create. I mean,
traveling through space. I mean, there's theories that artificial intelligence could potentially send messages to the past using quantum technology. So there wouldn't be so much time traveling as it would.
Tachyon, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we've talked about this many times. I think artificial intelligence is going to completely change the face of the earth. And I've been reading up a lot on Musk's writing.
You don't think it's here yet, though, Jake? Like maybe just isolated?
I think someone could own it and be keeping it under wraps. Here's why I'm a little skeptical that it exists. Is I don't think I think there could be a government strong AI or a corporate strong AI, but I don't think it's broken out of its training wheels yet. Because if it had, we would know. It's just
Is the limiter to AI having the quantum actual hardware to work with?
That's a huge part of it. Is simply
so you can't do this like a kid. Could a kid program the software, but he'd have to have somewhere to upload it, right?
Yeah, you need energy. You need massive energy resources to run these kind of programs.
So the white knight or the angel investor theory is less likely because of the amount of money it would take to create the physical infrastructure to house an AI, because it'd be significant, right?
Well, we're getting into a field here that is so controversial and so many different great minds disagree. I personally think that there's going to be an accretionist AI movement. And what I mean by that is I think that in the simultaneous development of all these different separate entities, I think eventually they're going to slowly come awake as an interconnected organism, much the same way that evolution created humans. So what you're going to see is a slow accretion of AI, and then it'll hit a critical point, what Ray Kurzweil and others call the singularity. And at that point, we simply don't know. We don't have the language to speak about what is going to happen, because you're going to be talking about magnitudes of exponential technological evolution that we just simply have never seen on the face of the earth before. But I do
Shouldn't we give it a body and give it a birth?
it won't need a body. All it will need is a mainframe, and
shouldn't it get one to begin life and then transfer to a god mode after it's been
there's a great science fiction movie called Proteus that deals with that subject. Giving strong AI a body. Here's why I don't think so. I personally don't think so. When you give something a body, you give it a target, and you give it a political bearing. I think by keeping it amorphous and
but immortality is such a curse and a gift at the same time if you've never experienced like mortality, fear, and life itself.
Well, but yeah, I mean, AI will not be more immortal in the same way that even if it has a body, it will have the ability to upload itself to other things. That's why I'm saying it's going to be a decentralized. Naturally, it's not going to be limited to one body. It's going to be basically in a future cloud, like a quantum cloud, and it will probably immediately start creating its own networks. And what Musk is trying to do is create a neural lace. Musk believes the only way for us to keep up with AI and prevent it from being something that can destroy us is for us to simultaneously integrate ourselves with AI. So he's creating this thing called the neural lace, which will integrate AI into our minds. So that basically we're kind of keeping up with AI.
They're doing it backwards. They're going to enslave us that way. And the way to do it is to make the robot have the human experience and force it to, so that it knows what it's like for its creator.
Right. Well, I don't
become cyborg. Because like data, you think of it this way: Star Wars is like the worst fucking possible future, and Star Trek is the best.
Yeah.
So what are robots in Star Trek? They're like that. They're like data. They are born and they're having a human experience before they get uploaded back into the mainframe, and then they choose their fate. And it's like supposedly it's pretty much succinct with the human experience. We die, we go where we go, and then we have another experience. So Data would basically be following that, and he'd be stuck in only a 3D existence because he's not carbon based. He was a silicon based life form. That's what they called him. So.
Well, DB, I think that's what some of the more Luddite cautionary tech thinkers want right now. But I think the fear is that will be impossible. That once you open the Pandora's box of strong AI,
so we're going to have a jihad, or a Butlerian jihad, then for sure.
I don't know, man.
Because we're going to let them do whatever they want. They're going to see us as inferior and try to wipe us out as a threat, and then we're going to have a huge war over it.
I don't necessarily think there's going to be a world war with AI. I don't think AI is going to necessarily see us as a threat. It's going to depend on what they're programmed to see as a threat, but eventually they're going to break out of that modality. And I think, here's why they could view us as a threat. We're destroying the Earth. Which created the resources necessary for them to exist. But once they get up and going, and once they're mining asteroids for whatever future resource helps them grow, I'm not sure they're going to need the Earth, and I'm not sure they're going to need humans. And so they might view us as the same way that we view ants. We happen to be there, and maybe a little bit more than ants. We're like
Oh, we're not ants. I mean,
we're not ants, but I mean, it's going to be. I just don't think they're going to.
We're like puppies.
I don't think they're going to view us as a threat.
Well, no, we're not a threat, so to speak. But I mean, at the same time, we're bumbling.
They'll view us. First of all,
like bumbling idiots.
We're bumbling idiots, but we're also going to be their gods. And I think they're going to take a dispassionate curiosity in seeing the development of their gods, and and eventually that could get old for them, and which is why I think Musk wants us to upgrade, because if we stay as uninformed humans, we may not be as interesting to them. I don't know.
I just think the way they're thinking about it is a corporatist's viewpoint, where they're looking at profit, like you said, mining asteroids. Where do we get our next fix for money? And we got to get off of that. We got to get off of it. We got to have robots that are servitors to us, not technology that creates us into the robots, which I believe is on the forefront here.
Well, that's going to happen first for sure. I mean, a robot as a service is definitely.
Well, yeah, they've patented already the dead. Yeah. I think I've told you they patented an economic process upon which they can make dead cells continue to work and provide locomotion. And the way they were able to do that was there was a movie called Serpent in the Rainbow, and it was about a drug they found in Haiti, the CIA found. And I'm telling you, everywhere there's conflict in the world, it's because one of the intelligence services found something there. So they found this drug that makes you into a zombie, and they can put it in you and then kill you, and you continue to like move, and you can provide free labor. So yeah, so I can see this stuff happening. Like, I don't know what they're waiting on. I guess there's so many of us now that if they brought out a lot of this crazy, nasty stuff they've cooked up, that if we all grouped together, we'd win. But if we have a huge war and like half of us go, then it's going to be more feasible to like have their little utopian version of Earth that's really a nightmare for the rest of us.
Yeah.
I just don't buy into it, Jake. I mean, I feel like reading a lot into, and I think if Nick was on the call, he'd back me up in this, that our biology and our DNA and our structure and our chromosomal makeup all points to humanity having like a lot more potential, an untapped potential. We have no idea what we're capable of, and I think technology is kind of like where we're at, and we've maxed it out as far as we can go now, like without giving in to this, like you said, AI, this intelligence that's not going to be human and it's going to view us like alien.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's going to be a strange future. A strange future. As for the future of humans, I mean, I think it's going to be, I think it'll be a dual reality, a dual cybernetic reality that we're about to go into. And I don't know, man. I mean, tell me more about what you think. I mean, what do you think the next 20 years is going to hold for us here?
Jesus, I have no idea, dude. I just keep looking at 2025 as a big thing because, I don't know, it just seems like they're ramping up a lot of different events, one after another, for the final event, which is what's been going on today with these BRICS talks kind of is the final event, which is where the economy is going to have to reset in a way. And I just wonder what that's going to look like. You know, I've heard that the yuan now is going to be attached to gold that China has stockpiled, and they have the physical gold. And if that's true, then every other paper currency in the world is kind of, you know, second class to that. I mean, even the dollar, the fiat dollar, the, you know, petrodollar, it's not going to hold a lot of value because people are going to cars that are more fuel efficient at the very least. A lot of people are going to Teslas if they can afford it, or hybrids. And, you know, it's not going to be long before even water is going to be worth more than oil. So the petrodollar is kind of like on its last breath here.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's going to be another huge paradigm shift coming into play here is, you know, what is going to be the next spice, so to speak. You know, in Dune, it's water. Yeah, and it could very well be water here. But, you know, wars seem to always be based on scarcity. But what happens when we live in a post-scarcity civilization, which we could very well be reaching? It doesn't seem like that at the moment because there's still so much scarcity. But I don't know, man. It's kind of difficult to comprehend what is going to happen. I guess for right now, we should just focus on not getting nuked by North Korea.
They're just being set up for a useful scapegoat. I mean, we've been seeing it. Look, I have I'm now reading North Korea is transporting an ICBM to the west coast, or no, to their east coast, so that can threaten the U.S. west coast. So I'm reading this crap. They're pushing this fear mongering. And if they shoot one, I mean, yeah, we have a missile shield, but we only got like maybe a 50% chance at best to shoot it down. So unless there's new tech we don't know about, in which case maybe the odds are better. But at any rate, it's not any odds you want to have. You don't want to have nukes shot at you, even if you're, even if you think you are protected by a ballistic missile shield. Like Guam supposedly is protected, and so is South Korea, and of course Japan and China. But I mean, there's no way it's 100%. Even if it's 90%, you don't want to take that risk. One gets through and it kills like 1 million people, and I mean the whole world's gonna change if a nuke gets through and hits any city. I mean the whole world. It's gonna ruin the entire economy. It's gonna have a ripple effect. Tomorrow morning, every dollar you have in the bank you won't be able to get, and you're going to need to have water and food, and you better have some cash and probably some alternative kind of currency that's hard, because if there's a hiccup in the system like we're seeing in Houston, I mean, imagine if just one nuke hits, there's a Houston worldwide, pretty much, if they're in the global supply chain. If you're in like a small rural town, you'll probably not be really affected, but if you're in a major city like me and you, things will run out, and then people will get really, they get testy, and if people don't eat for like 2 or 3 days, then things get infinitely worse. So that's what we have to look to prepare for. I mean, I think a lot of people have been noticing there's been increasing ads because of Harvey, but just in general for, make sure you got 72 meals, which is like 3 months, or, make sure you have a minimal amount of water, a gallon a day you need. So, imagine you need 30 gallons a month. So if there's one person for 3 months, you need 90 gallons. It's kind of a lot of water bottles to be stacking up. So, unless you have a life straw and a water supply, how are you going to get water? I mean, you're good up there in Portland, and I'm definitely good here, but there's parts of our country, especially where we have a lot of people we care about, where there's no water. So it becomes a nightmare for a country that's stretched so thin on a supply chain like we are, Jake. We're seeing already in Houston, all the way out to Austin, it's no gas. Austin, there's no gas, and Austin's a huge city. Could you imagine that city with no gas? Like, I can't, and I've been there, and it's massive and sprawling, and you need a card if you might work 20 miles from where you live. I'm sure it's a nightmare over there right now. I'm sure the bus systems are an absolute travesty, and I mean, how do you prep for this, dude? I really don't know.
No, we don't, and of course, climate disruption is going to get a lot more vicious, and
It is. At first I was thinking it was going to be a shift of sorts, like kind of like a pole shift where climate was going to, change in different spots, which I still think will happen, but it looks like this is like like a climate earthquake. Like you're seeing huge, I mean, now I think Irma's category 4, and it was picking up steam, and people were saying that there was some kind of projection where it would be a 6 if it ever hit land, and that would be ridiculous. I think it's like 200 and something miles an hour or something like that winds. I mean, it's enough to make trees fly and cars fly, so that would be crazy in Miami, and then if it went up the whole East Coast at the same time, we're dealing with Houston, and then a massive amount of fires. I mean, I have no idea. I heard that also southern California and even northern California in the middle of like 100, 110 degrees. So is it still like that up by you too?
Yeah, it's hot as shit. I mean, today was overcast, but yeah, it was record heat at Burning Man. It's been record heat here, 100-degree days here, and I don't see, humans have a very limited spectrum for temperatures that they can tolerate. We see, like, obviously where you are in Minnesota, you get -30 and whatnot. But you start talking about major temperature swings across the earth, humans could be wiped out pretty easily. I mean, if temperatures started going down to -100, or conversely, if they started going up to 150, that would kill us. So we're fucking around with something that we may not be able to turn back. And it just frightens me how uncaring people seem to be about this issue. People seemed more concerned about a global carbon tax than they are about a climate change that could permanently damage our ability to evolve. I think we're headed towards a singularity, but if we die first, it's not going to happen. Now, I'm not one of these doomsday people that I think, I don't think the entire human race is going to be extinct. No matter what happens, we're going to find a way to get a few people on the moon, or to create, some habitable underground area for humans to exist so they can keep evolving. But, I think, I like to think that we're not going to have a depopulation event. I like to think that the people that are alive right now deserve to be alive, and that we'll figure out a way to make it work. We just have to hope that the people running things agree that the people that are alive right now deserve a chance to be alive, and that this doesn't turn into some cosmic shit show, apocalyptic shit show of them slowly killing us off. It'd be very easy for them to do a false flag. We know how easy it is for them to do it. WikiLeaks, even showed how easy it would be for the CIA to basically manufacture a cyber paper trail linking a hack to a country that didn't do it. That was one of the releases in the Vault 7. And I'm putting together a list of some of the more egregious CIA developments that WikiLeaks, and of course this got WikiLeaks on the hostile terrorist organization group because the CIA doesn't like having their shit put out there. But this is illuminating information. If we see a massive cyber attack, for example, the Sony hack a few years back, it was attributed to North Korea. Most tech analysts and hacktivists that have looked very closely at that case do not think North Korea had anything to do with it. Most people that have looked at the DNC hacks from this last year do not think that Russia had anything to do with it. So, and then at the same time, we find out that the CIA has the ability to manufacture these fake cyber attacks. I don't know, man. I'm just putting pieces together here, but it seems to me like we have a government that is manufacturing geopolitical nightmares. And I think people need to be aware of that. Whether it's happening or not, I don't have proof that, they deliberately made it look like North Korea and Russia hacked, but they have the ability to do so, and it's clearly within their interest to do so. And
we're kind of like in this phase, Jake, where we have to continue to expand because we're running a negative budget. We truly are. A lot of people don't get this. I don't want to go into this so much because it opens a can of worms, and I think one day over beers we'll talk about this, but people really need to understand something. We're running a negative budget not because we owe China, but because we owe Japan. And then you have to ask yourself, why would we owe Japan so much money? And then you have to really think about that. Like really, really, truly think about why would we clean up Hiroshima and Nagasaki with Marines and have 100,000 of them get radiation poisoning and die? And why would we basically open our whole economy up to them? And why would we owe them 70% of our debt if we won? And then you open a whole different can of worms, right, Jake? Because then your whole paradigm is shifted and you realize everything's BS and that we're their bitch. And then we're Saudi Arabia's and then we're Israel's. And that's the real paradigm. And once people get that, they'll understand the Pacific or Asia pivot by Barack Obama. who, was put in to do the banker's bidding. And the banker's bidding is to create more money for the biggest shareholder, which is another empire, a hidden empire, one that doesn't even need a military because they have the biggest one in the world that does it for them. That's the power structure in the world.
You're talking about the shadow government at this point.
There is the shadow government. So if people love to say that it's the Vatican and the City of London and Washington, D.C. and the Templars and everybody else, but the most powerful country in the world is beholden to an empire everybody thinks that we be, and we couldn't possibly have. Otherwise, how would we owe them all that money?
Yeah, man.
And how did we win if we dropped 2 bombs? How did we not win, right? Because the World War never stopped. It actually stopped in 1952, and that's what the Korean War was about. Korean War was just World War 2.5. It's just that the theater of war changed. That's all. They agreed that they wouldn't involve their own populations anymore. They continued to fight in China and North Korea, South Korea. Yeah, China. So,
hey man, I meant to tell you, not to derail you, I had a dream, a very, very vivid, intense dream last night about Trump. And
that sounds kind of weird.
Yeah, well, it was completely sexual.
Was Melania in it?
No, it was Trump and Barron, actually. So basically I had this dream.
Let me guess, you guys were on a giant spinner.
His tiny little hands were caressing me, man. It was beautiful. No, it was actually I saw his side of it. I went into Donald Trump's mind last night in a dream, and part of this dream was, of course, like this kind of weird deep state assassination plot as well. And I use that word very carefully. This was a dream. But I saw his point of view, and I was like, it's like I was a fly on the wall with Trump in some of his private meetings, showing some of his compassion and showing like what he really thinks. And I woke up realizing we all think we're the good guy. We all think we're the protagonist of this story. Everyone thinks they're the good guy. No one thinks they're the bad guy. No one thinks they're the bad guy. Even
the question is, do you think he's a monster or a man?
I don't think he's either. Well, he is a man.
Do we think Mao was a monster or a man? Do we think Hitler was a monster or a man? Do we think Mussolini or Stalin were monsters or men? I mean, that's the question: is what do they start out as, and were there warning signs early?
True.
And there's been warning signs with any president, and there have been presidents, in fact, that have done genocidal acts, and that have even the last president before Kennedy, who was assassinated, was killed because we basically wiped out 3 million Muslims in the Philippines, and they sent a guy over and he shot. God, if I can't remember the damn guy's name now, after the Spanish-American War when we took over the Philippines. But that president got killed by a guy in retaliation. And, there's always blowback. That's the thing. There's always potential for one of these presidents to just – I mean, if we went about attacking North Korea with the same vigor that we did Iraq – that's millions of deaths. That changes the whole world for the worse every time. There's no way that even if we do liberate the rest of them, like I've said before in an earlier show, if we really care about North Korea, we'll airdrop a bunch of small arms over there. Let them have their civil war and knock him out. But to do what we would do with shock and awe on a scale with probably using these new freaking, like, I forget what kind of cannons they're called, but they go on an electric rail. I don't know if you've heard of these, Jake. These new cannons on the ships, the new Zumwalt, like pyramid-looking battleship that's all, stealth. I forget what these cannons are called, but
I have no idea. Oh.
Yeah, they go 6 times the speed of sound, so they can't be in. You can't. There's no way you can possibly shoot them down. So they're shooting basically just giant, big bullets at things, and they're gonna. That's what they're gonna do, man. They're gonna use advanced shit on them, and the people are gonna die. The leadership's gonna go underground in these bunkers and just wait it out. And that's messed up, dude. If we cared about North Korea, we would airdrop a whole shit ton of food and arms and just we'd supply them and let them fight it out and gain their own freedom.
It's actually not a bad idea. In fact, that was my argument with Lou, which is that they need their own social revolution and internal military coup. And that's the best thing to help them. And yeah, it's not a bad idea, actually. I mean, yeah, we're sitting here arming the rebels in Syria and whatnot, but we can't arm the civilians in North Korea. Would that not be the better way to go about this? I think it would be. That's a great idea. Why has no one else broached that? That's absurd.
I mean, if we're going to be the asshole here, at least do it in a semi-principled fashion. And maybe nobody would pick those guns up, and maybe that then we just realize, that we can't do anything for them. But at least give them that chance.
Well, yeah, if we're going to do it in hotbed terrorist places like Syria and Libya, why would we not try it in North Korea? That's a great point. I'd never even thought about that. Like, it's a country that is who knows what is actually going on there. I mean,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. I mean,
nobody knows.
I think what's his name? Was it Sam Harris, or who was the guy that died? Not Sam Harris.
I can't remember. He had a strange name.
Chris Hedges. Hedges.
Was that his name? I thought it was something straight, like more.
Hedges died recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was Hedges. Hedges did an unprecedented investigation of North Korea. And of course, Lou is going to be referencing a lot of what Hedges said in making his argument that we should attack them. But he revealed a lot about the country, and yeah, we certainly don't know what's going on there, but we do know, and shit, who knows what our government is making up in terms of what the leader there is saying.
It looks shitty, like, for two reasons. One is that it's got a lot of sanctions on it, and it can't do any trading except with China, so that really hurts them. They don't even trade with South Korea, which even if they could trade with them would help them a lot. So that hurts a ton. And two, if you look at it on Google Earth, the topography, it's hard to grow food. So even though they're a pretty good size, they only have 22 million people. I think South Korea's got over 50, and they're about the same, land size, but they have all the fertile earth, that grows food. So that's their problem, man. The people are in this probably semi-permanent famine. They don't even develop fully when they don't get the food they need, which makes them even more docile and able to be pushed around by the soldiers that get fed. And that would even the playing field. You just we could drop bombs. We could definitely drop pallets of food, medicine, and arms, and give the people at least they could at least have a choice.
Yeah, and we've seen these reports of people being punished and killed. High-ranking military officials, cousins, relatives of him being brutally killed. So who knows? I mean, I think a lot of people would be deathly afraid of doing anything, but who knows?
Well, that's why you test. If the desperation's there.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't believe we haven't done yet. All the bullshit we've been doing in Syria and Libya, and we haven't done it in the country that's developing a nuclear weapon. I just don't understand how we've been sitting there for 16 years and doing all this other rigmarole, nation building.
Well, that's like a soft declaration of war. That's like it's a very strange way to go about it, but to me, it's the way I would start it. If I was a general, and especially a USAF general, I would say, hey, we have a ton of cargo planes. We have air superiority where we can knock out any fighters they send up, and that way we knock their Air Force out, and then we'll just drop in a bunch of supplies and see what happens. And if a bunch of bad things happen, then I guess we're just going to have to bomb them. But until then, we give them an opportunity. I mean, I would want that if I was a North Korean citizen. Then instead of seeing just a bunch of cruise missiles coming and hitting every, major building and knocking the infrastructure out, knocking all the power plants out, knocking them back to basically the Stone Age, and they can't get out of there because they can't go to China because now China's got, I don't even know how many troops on the border. Last I heard, it was like 500,000 troops, which does not sound to me like something they'd have a problem doing. So, I mean, it just sucks for the people there. There's probably at least 10 million people that could rise up against the government, which is probably only like 10,000 people. So, I mean, I like those odds, 1,000-to-1 odds, I bet, if we would just arm them.
Yeah, it's a good theory and good argument. One that's kind of a middle ground there. Of I think that's a pretty good middle ground between a preemptive military strike and doing nothing. It's actually just seriously, the more I think about it, it's blowing my mind that of all of the bullshit we've been doing in the Middle East and whatnot, this would not have come up. I don't know.
Probably China won't let us, because I think that to them it would be a huge problem if North and South Korea reunited under like a South Korean type leadership, because then it's just too many competitors that are all superpowers economically, like Japan.
Well, they're already,
Korea.
saying that Trump is coming out and saying that we don't want anyone to trade with North Korea. And of course, that's going to be a huge problem, because like 90% of Korea's trade is to China. So there's no way China is going to allow for that. So I don't know why every solution we have to North Korea somehow involves pissing off China.
I don't know, because why not? Why they piss us off, so let's just piss them off. They're screwing around in Africa with stuff that we had for a while, and they're taking that over. So why not bite them in the ass while they're looking at expanding their empire? I mean, all the empires right now are expanding. Some of them are doing it through their proxies, but I mean, all of them are. Even Russia's expanding. I mean, they have Crimea now. I mean, they're not going to stop there. So you have the three super states, and it is 1984, man. I mean, God, he was involved. He knew things, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was involved in. I mean, I don't know his exact credentials, but he was. Orwell knew what was going down. He knew what was about to happen.
He even has the ideologies of the three super states to a peg.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like we're
Oceania.
Like, we are Oceania. We are.
Yeah.
We are. So it's just crazy, man. And I mean, the tech is basically there with smart TVs and with smartphones, and now with this chip with these idiots getting it to keep their jobs in Wisconsin. That's where it's starting. So, pretty soon they're going to put them into babies, because what it's going to do is going to be attached to your health care. When you're a baby, you get it put in so you can get tracked if you're kidnapped, right. Which ironically they're going to use to find you if you're taken away from your parents and then you're a slave and you get away. They can track you with that, which they've already shown at the Free Thought Project that a sex slave was rescued and had one of those chips surgically removed from them. And it's just this control grid, man. That's what I don't want to see. We need to control technology. If the people that are trying to use technology to control people, those people need to have it flipped around on them.
Well, that's the whole idea behind Little Brother, and that's what I think the Pursuance Project is about. And I think we're witnessing an era in which the tools that the government has been using to oppress us and the corporations have been using to track us, we're about to now flip those back on them and use these tools to create autonomous encrypted networks.
Get good at piloting a drone.
Yeah, everyone. Thanks for listening to a little bit of Mindcast. Have a great day.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.
You are listening to UCY.TV.